Hey everyone, this is Mike, and earlier today the Liveletter Part 2 for patch 5.2 in Final Fantasy took place. So we're going to talk about it. It's basically going to be a big overview of everything that was in the Liveletter. It was about 3.5–4 hours, and you don't want to necessarily watch all of that, of course, just get the necessary information. So, first and foremost, most important thing, patch day is indeed going to be the 18th of February, which is a little bit less than 2 weeks from now. So, new patch is coming very soon. Now, when they started out the Liveletter, they first talked very lengthily about third-party programs and how they are not allowed in Final Fantasy XIV, and it's also going to have a direct impact on some stuff that is going to be happening in the next patch, more specifically markers. The reason why they did this is because a lot of complaints came for the world first clear of the Epic of Alexander, where a program called Paisley Park, I believe it's called, was used to basically instantly replace markers. And this is something that isn't necessarily was being abused back then, because I know a lot of people that use it as well to just set up markers when they go into an instance to make it just easy to set up markers, which I can totally get. But later down the line for the Epic of Alexander, more specifically, it was also being abused to basically place markers to make certain mechanics easier. So because of that, they're going to make it so that you won't be able to replace markers once you're in combat. Now, I'm not 100% sure if they said that you won't be able to place any either, because it's totally possible that you, for example, set up your first 4 markers and then the other 4 can be placed during combat, but it's basically a little bit confusing still, but in general, you won't be able to replace markers as easily as you would now. But to combat this, you are given 8 markers now in total, so you can place more markers. And they also added the base functionality of what most of the people use Paisley Park for, which is just placing markers when you get into an instance as an actual game feature. So you can now save up to, it seems like 5 slots of different fights, and then you can even copy saved like formations of the markers from other people as well. So if you go into a party finder, somebody sets up markers, you really like the way that they set it up, you can save it to your loadout, and then when you go into, for example, E2 Savage, you just press the button and you have your markers set up. So one hand, pretty cool change that they're now making it a game feature for the markers. On the other hand, still a little bit confused about how placing markers during the middle of a fight is going to be. In general, for Savage fights, I don't think this will affect the player base at all, but when it comes to Ultimate fights, where you might want to set up different markers depending on what mechanic or what phase you're going to go into, it could affect people right there quite a bit. I'm especially thinking about like nail dive bombs in UCUP and stuff like that, but outside of that, I don't really think that this is going to be too bad, or at least not as bad as people make it out to be right now. So with that out of the way, let's kind of go into all of the other stuff that they talked about in this Liveletter, which is not going to be as negative as this section. So first of all, job adjustments, something that people are always very interested in. Now, because Yoshida doesn't want people to speculate too much and basically be like, oh my god, my job is ruined, or this job is going to be OP, they basically only said what is going to be happening a little bit, but they didn't go into any specifics. So what we know now is that Red Mage is underperforming, that is going to be gaining buffs. More specifically, they said something about Flesh and reducing the drop-off from AoE abilities. And when they talked about Summoner, they said that it was buffed too much, so it's going to be getting a slight nerf on their dot potencies. Other than that, Samurai is also going to get a minor adjustment, not in potencies or the way their rotation flows, but in their job UI. So in the previous patch, 5.1 I believe it was, they made it so that you now gain meditate stacks differently through the usage of your Iai Jutsu and your Tsubame Gaishi. And right now your meditate stacks are on your buff bar. Now of course, if you've raided before or in the 24-man, something like that, you'll know that when you have stuff in a fight you get a lot of other buffs, like for example heals over time, scars from an Astro, battle litany from the Dragoon, stuff like that. And they can bloat your buff bar quite a bit, so it's very easy to lose track of your meditate stacks, so they're basically going to be moving that to the job UI as well, so you get an extra little gauge that you can keep track of those meditate stacks, which I think is a very perfect solution, as I actually mentioned that one to a friend of mine yesterday when we were doing the 24-man, so I'm pretty happy with the change that that is going to bring. Of course, since it is a big patch, there's going to be some new main story quests. They also mentioned that the cutscenes for this one are going to be a bit longer, so if you want to just jump in the MSQ, they did say take the whole day for it, so apparently it's going to be quite a bit of extra story content, and seeing how Shadowbringers, the story has been amazing so far, I'm pretty much looking forward to this one as well. Together with main story quests, we also are getting a new Beast Tribe quest, which is going to be the Kitari, This is going to be a little bit different than the usual, because usually back when we look at Heavensward and Stormblood, we had 2 battle classes beast tribes, and then we had 1 for gatherers and crafters, more specifically crafters usually. And now we're going to get one that is only for gatherers. Of course, since it is Shadowbringers content, your gatherer does need to be level 70 and above. So if you want to do this, make sure that you level your gatherers, that you still have 2 weeks, which should be plenty of time, since the XP is pretty, well, the increase in XP that you gain now for leveling crafters and gatherers has been increased so much. And they also showed off the mount, which is going to be a Great Serpent of Ronka mount, which is a little side quest that you can do in the Raktika Greatwood as well, which I definitely recommend people to do. So new beast tribe is going to be for gatherers only, so if you want to do it, make sure your gatherers are leveled. Then coming 6 weeks down the line, which is going to be in patch 5.25, there is going to be a new relic introduced. Of course, new relic means that we can finally upgrade this throughout the rest of the expansion as well. But what's going to be really cool is that we are also going to be getting an extreme trial that is linked to this relic weapon. We're most likely going to have a normal mode for the story and then for the relic weapon itself as well, but also an extreme version of this that you can probably farm for a mount, would be my guess, of course. That's basically meaning that we're going to get 2 extreme primals in this patch. The one that's coming out in 2 weeks is going to be the Cinder's Drift, which is the ruby weapon that we saw in the trailer, and they also showed off some extra cutscene, well, little bit of extra cutscenes around it, and also some gameplay of the fight itself. And then of course 6 weeks after that we're going to get this secret trial for the relic weapon as well. And then we also have our 1 dungeon that is coming out this patch too. As they mentioned in the previous live letter, there's only going to be 1 dungeon per patch now, in favor of creating extra content, and this time around the extra content is going to be that secret trial that we are going to get 6 weeks later. Together with these new trials, we're also going to be getting the new raid tier, because even number patch means new raid tier. Of course, Savage is going to be releasing the exact same date as normal mode, so if you want to jump into Savage you can do that from day 1, so make sure you have enough stuff prepared for it, like your gear and such, because you don't have that 2 minute, or that 2 minute, the 2 week like period where you can just farm normal mode for gear. They also showed off some of the boss fights. It looks like Gaia is going to be a boss, then we have Ramuh fusioned together with Ixion, and then we also have a fight that is basically a dual boss fight with Garuda and Ifrit. So it looks really cool. Of course, for the last boss we don't know what that is going to be just yet. I can't really say anything about it because we already are getting what is essentially 3 to 4 primals, that being Garuda, Ifrit and then Ramuh. Together with Ixion. Ixion wasn't really a primal in Stormblood, of course, but it was that special fate. So it is looking pretty interesting, and I'm really curious to see what that last boss is going to be. With the new raid tier, of course, also come new tomestones. This time they're going to be called Tomestones of Allegory. This will be the new weekly tomestone that you can farm for every week. Of course, you can get 450 of those every week. And then Phantasmagoria, which are the currently capped tomestone, is going to be farmable, so you'll be able to get some gear upgrades. We're most likely also going to be using the Phantasmagoria to buy materials for our crafted gear and stuff like that. They also showed off the crafted gear of the ranged, which was from a competition, I believe. Looks really good, so I'm definitely looking forward to getting my hands on that. They also mentioned that the raid this time, the Savage raid that is going to be a bit harder than Eden's Gate. The reason being for that is that during Eden's Gate we of course had new jobs, that being Gunbreaker and Dancer, and we also got a bunch of new skills introduced to our jobs as well, so they made the raid a little bit easier so that people had the time to get used to playing their jobs and they're like getting used to their new skills and stuff. So that is why this raid, Eden Verse, is going to be a little bit harder this time. It's also going to be introducing some new mechanics apparently, and the boss designers are also completely different from the ones that worked on the previous raid. So gonna be really interesting to see what all those new mechanics are going to be. Then moving on to the more casual content, I guess you could call it, or crafting and gatherer stuff like that. We are of course getting an update to the Ishgard restoration. They said they were going to be updating this throughout Shadowbringers, so here is our first update for it. It's going to be happening in patch 5.21, which is 3 weeks after patch 5.2 comes out, and it's going to introduce a few new things together with it. First of all, we have the Diadem Rework. This is basically going to become a gathering zone. You can fly around, you can gather, you even apparently have unspoiled nodes and stuff like that as well. And there's also going to be mobs that you can gather from. Now, since this is a gathering only zone, you can't actually fight these mobs, but instead, by gathering, you're going to be able to fill a gauge, and then you can use that gauge to fire your bazooka at whichever mob that you want to then gather their materials. Looks really funny. Doesn't really seem to fit in Final Fantasy in my opinion, but it does have some comedic aspect to it. Now, whilst you're gathering in there, you can also gain Coupo of Fortunes, which are basically lottery tickets, and then you can basically use those to win certain prizes. Can be some prisms or stuff like that, like consumables, but they also seem to be emotes and minions. I saw, I think, 3 minions in the reward list of the 2 tickets that he did try, and he got an emote which was the eating bread emote, so you can see that we have that one as well. Together with this are going to be coming some crafting and gathering updates as well. They're going to be changing and removing some skills, but not too many. So they already changed a bunch for crafting and gathering in the previous patch, which I think was pretty good changes. I was very happy with them, especially the crafting and especially the gathering ones. Crafting was dumbed down quite a bit, and gathering got a lot of quality of life, but overall I do quite like the changes that they brought. And now they're going to be basically adding on to that. The one that they showed off is going to be the fisher one, where when you're fishing, you're now going to get an exclamation mark on top of your head when you get your tug. And this will also indicate the strength of the tug. One of the things about fisher is that, especially when you're doing patience fishing, which is where you're using GP to get higher quality basically of your fish, and you basically always wanted to know which fish you're basically going to be catching. You do this by knowing the strength of the tug of that specific fish, and then also how long it takes for the fish to bite, because there's all sorts of things out there. And then you would basically, when you get a fish that you don't want, you don't catch it, because that would cost GP to catch the fish. So that's where this animation comes into play, and then of course this will make it a lot easier for newer fishers to get used to these animations and that kind of stuff, because the exclamation marks will help you with the strength of the tug, or at least that's how I interpreted it. Of course, these changes for fisher were also made because we now have ocean fishing, where you can go to Limsa Lominsa, you can hop on a boat, and you can basically go on a fishing trip for 15 minutes. Looks pretty cool. Seems something that people that like fishing could enjoy quite a bit. I'm definitely going to be taking a look at it when it comes out. Last but not least, for crafter and gatherer things, we also have these Sky Steel tools. Now, this is a crafter and gatherer relic weapon that we'll be able to get this patch as well, or well, next patch I guess, kind of. And this will of course be updated throughout the rest of the expansion as well, kind of like how we have our relic weapons for our battle classes. We're now gonna have a relic tool for our crafters and gatherers. So people that are really into gathering and crafting are getting a lot of stuff this expansion really, and I do think that is a really good thing, because the crafting system is pretty good in this game. I know a lot of people that do enjoy it quite a bit, so it's really cool to see that we're also getting a relic tool for that right now as well. This will of course have its own story and stuff surrounding it as well, so you can get some more story behind that stuff too. This will also take place in Ishgard, because the Sky Steel Manufactory, which is also where you unlock Machinist, is in Ishgard as well, so you can basically get some more lore around that as well. So these are basically the big points that they talked about in what is going to be coming in the next patch. There's also a few smaller ones that I still want to quickly touch up on as well. First one being convert changes. If you don't know what convert is, basically if you use a piece of gear long enough, you're going to spirit bond it, and once you reach 100% spirit bond, you can transmute that piece of gear into a materia. This is one of the major ways that you use to get crafting and gathering materia. Right now it's a lot easier with the way that you gain them, because you can trade your like your yellow and your white scripts for them. But basically what is going to change is, instead of you destroying the piece of gear to make a materia, you are now going to be reducing the spirit bond level from 100% back to 1 and then create a materia, meaning that through the lifespan of that you're going to be using that gear, you're going to be able to make multiple materials out of that, which is especially good for crafting and gathering, because those are pieces of gear that you're going to be sharing across your 3 gatherers or across the 8 crafters that are there. So it's going to be pretty good for those especially, and then of course for battle content it'll be pretty useful as well. If you have a piece of gear that you hold on to for quite a while, you can make a few materials out of that instead of just the one, so pretty good right there. New Game Plus is gonna get extra chapters, so if you want to revisit some older story, you can go do that as well. FCs are getting an extra rank increase. This will most likely mean that we might get new actions or higher versions of the actions that are currently available already. Not 100% sure what this is going to bring, maybe some updates to the FC workshop and stuff like that as well, but details have not really been set around this, so we just know that the FC rank is going to increase, which should be pretty good. Leap of Fate, which is a golden saucer gate, is going to get a new course. You can also go visit, or actually look at the location that is going to take place, because it's going to be above Outer La Noscea. Basically, when you go to Outer La Noscea, you go all the way to the edge of the map. You can look out and you can see a bunch of floating islands. That's basically where the new Leap of Fate course is going to take place. Looks pretty cool. And then last but not least, they also added umbrellas, which is going to be mainly for people that want to roleplay. For example, it's raining, you take out your umbrella and now you don't get wet anymore. It's a pretty cool thing for people that just want to roleplay and stuff like that, or if you want to take some cool screenshots, I imagine. And then last but not least, they also made the announcement for FanFest, when it's going to be and where it is going to be as well. I'll leave a picture on screen right now of all the dates and the places where it's going to be. I'm definitely going to go again. FanFest has always been very fun for me to go to. I went to the last two ones, the one in Frankfurt and the one in Paris, and I've always had a blast going. So if you're into Final Fantasy and you know a few friends that play as well, definitely try to get your hands on some tickets, because the tickets do go very fast. So make sure that you basically get them as fast as possible if you do plan on going. In my opinion, FanFest has always been an incredible time, and I definitely recommend people to go as well, because you'll probably have a good time as well. So that was about all of the information, or like most of the important information for me at least, that came out of the live letter, and I think hopefully you enjoyed some of it as well. So that's gonna be it for me. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.